welcome to our third Center for Digital Education Coffee Talk. I'm Michaela Thornton, instructional designer here at Washington University in St. Louis, and I have three really wonderful guests that are going to talk with us a little bit today about how they approach, discuss, and teach academic integrity with students, especially as we approach the end of the semester. And this is, I think, a conversation starter that's going to have a lot of different perspectives. So I'm very eager to hear what people think about how they can have, I think a really meaningful discussion either with students or a way maybe of front loading things so that maybe this conversation isn't something that's always, cloaked in doom and dread. So
I'm happy to start if you'd like. I'm Stacy Thomas, and I teach management communication. This is an undergraduate level course, so I have primarily sophomores, although we do get students from other schools. So I will have a small measure of students from engineering, architecture, and arts and sciences. I think, for me, I'm very fortunate because the content of my course kind of lends itself to avoiding academic integrity. And so, one of the things that I definitely try to do is use exams that assess application rather than necessarily recitation or problem sets. And so, asking the students to apply those skills in a practical way is one thing that I do. But I think, another thing that I tend to do because this is business school is as we move in towards the end of the semester, I like to equate, academic integrity with what you might see in the workplace relative to, say, copyright infringement, right? Or intellectual property, because I'm like, it still exists. This is not, it's not just a college thing. It's not just an academic thing. It's a life thing. So the terminology and the stakes for it change once you move into the workplace. And so, I think that's kind of a fun conversation to have to show the students of how does this move forward and what does it mean to the rest of your career?
Yeah, I can echo that. So I'm Nora Williams. I'm in the marketing department and I teach consumer behavior, which is the psychology of being a consumer to undergrads and to the MBAs. And I definitely echo that idea of application rather than just recitation, which of course they much prefer and that they're very good at that and have lots of practice. But nobody's ever going to point at them and say, hey, what's the definition of cognitive dissonance? That's just not a thing that happens in life. And so having them be able to apply it has the benefit of not only getting them to think it through and how they'll use it, but also it makes it a lot harder for them to cheat or cut corners or otherwise do things that wouldn't have a lot of academic integrity. So I definitely agree with a lot of that. I have to say, I also end up planting ideas of the importance of thinking through the ethics of things in my class because of the content of it. And so as much as I don't go as far as Stacy and say, this is what you'll be doing in life, I often do say, well, so what would you do if your boss asked you to do something that you don't feel comfortable with? What's your response? That's part of consumer behavior. And so those ideas of being a good person and having an ethical viewpoint are just kind of dotted throughout the course, which I think also helps a little bit me not having to lecture them about it, but instead just sort of put it as, this is what I expect from you, and this is what you'll have to think about once you leave this course.
I serve as the Associate Director for our specialized master's programs in our graduate programs office. So that means that I'm primarily supporting the students that are in our graduate programs other than our MBAs, and provide support to them from really before they arrive on campus for day one and orientation all the way through graduation and beyond. And my primary responsibility is with my team thinking about how can we help students be successful in and out of the classroom throughout their entire degree, take full advantage of the learning in as well as the resources outside of the class. And so where academic integrity fits in there is, of course, helping students understand our expectations, the policy, the procedure, the process for assessing and making sure that everyone is in compliance and why that's important. But then also helping students understand and provide tips for success so that they can really avoid any issues of academic integrity. So from before they even step on campus, we have online modules, we have live webinars where our focus is helping students understand that we do have a set of expectations, helping them understand why those are important for their individual learning and development, as well as the broader community at Olin, and the value of everyone adhering to those expectations. And then helping them think about, what do I need to do as a student to communicate, clarify things with my professors in advance, with my classmates and my group mates, as well as how do I plan and prepare and forecast those perhaps higher risk situations where directions are a little bit vaguer, or I know I'm going to be extremely stressed and busy. How can I prepare as a student in advance to avoid finding myself in a situation where academic integrity might become an issue?
Interestingly, cheating, it's very much a cultural thing, and how we define that varies from culture to culture. And so understanding that in some cultures imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? Or that maybe ownership of ideas it's not a cultural norm. And so making sure that you establish up front what your expectations are. And I'm not as good about doing this as I should be, but in many cases, where I know there's an assignment that might be particularly prone to it, especially when I have such a diverse student base, I'll define what exactly would cheating look like in this situation for this particular assignment, right? And so it might be collaborating, it might be a failure to cite your sources. But in most cases, I try to think about, okay, what does my student base look like? What are the cultural factors at play here, and what might determine what's truly considered being of high integrity?
I feel like my approach is a little bit like, I assume that most of them are great and it's not going to be a concern, and some of them are maybe gonna take a few shortcuts, we'll say. And so recognizing that both of those things are true is part of the balance of all of this, and trying to figure out, where might people be especially prone to it, and trying to head that off from the start, I think is really key. One thing I tend to do just generally is to emphasize that I really just want them to learn, and that if I have to give them all A's because they've all learned everything, like, I don't care. I'll apologize, have to apologize too, but like, that's all I care about is them understanding the material. And that's the most important thing. And I think that also definitely helps, that the grade doesn't matter to me, that really it's that they can demonstrate that they've understood things. And I think that takes some of the pressure off, to be like very clear that I'll give them as good a grade as I can. I just want them to learn. And so some of that is that kind of expectation setting of, this is what you're here for, is to understand these things, not to get an A. And so like, let's take the pressure off the A part of it and focus on the learning. And I think that also helps them quite a bit. In addition, because of that, I tend to focus on making sure my assignments and all of my quizzes really, focus on application, and also are kind of in some ways hard to cheat on a little bit because they're all novel and new and unique to the situation. So I do a community engaged learning project throughout the whole semester, and it ends up being new every time. And so there just isn't space for them to do a lot of things that might get them into trouble. And so some of it is that kind of expectation setting of like, it's just not possible for you guys to run into these kinds of integrity issues because of the way the assignment's set up from the start. And so all of that, of understanding that some of them are going to, want to take a shortcut, and some of them will not even think about it, and trying to find ways to balance all that out to minimize these issues, I think is my main approach to all of this.
Yeah, I think that's key. I think if we're using the same assessment methods from a decade ago, we might want to look at why we're doing that. Would be my question as an instructional designer. Like, I'm so glad it's worked for you, but is there a way to maybe contemporize this for our audience? Is there a way to make this much more relevant or timely? And I know some of the people that are doing more computational forms of assessment might push back, but I would very much love to talk with them about that too. So I think that's always kind of fun. I really appreciate your time. I just want to say thank you, all three of you, for your time today.
Thank you, Kella.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kella, for
All
sending
right, bye.